Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Good day, and welcome to our podcast. This is CampHacker, episode 97, recorded on the 1st of February, 2017. On today's show, what's on your mind? Uncertainty is a killer of good work, and other debatable statements. If you would like easy, automatic, free updates of our podcast, you can subscribe in iTunes or use the free Stitcher app. This week's CampHacker podcast is sponsored by GoCamp Pro. GoCamp Pro is a year-round online camp conference for the true summer camp mavericks, the camp pros who can't stand it when people say, "But that's not how we do it around here." GoCamp Pro is a community of year-round summer camp staffers who empower each other to make the big changes that camp needs so that our campers and staff will go and change the world. To try it for free for 1 week, go to www.gocamp.pro. And this week's episode is sponsored in part by camp pros like you who support the show on Patreon. We want to thank those patrons who have been supporting the show from the beginning and without fail. David G., Andy L., Marie W., Teresa ML, Lisa Summer Fun, Ange A., Jack and Laura, and Mark P. If you've got even one good idea from the CampHacker podcast, you can show your support for the show for as little as $1 per episode. We've got some great rewards too, just like a Kickstarter campaign. Please go to patreon.com/CampHacker. We hope you enjoy the CampHacker show.
Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a founder of GoCamp Pro, a year-round camp conference for summer camp mavericks, and I am pleased to allow my co-host to introduce themselves.
My name is Joe Richards. I'm the Executive Director at Pierce Williams Christian Center, which is a summer camp and retreat facility that's part of the United Church of Canada camp system. We are located in Fingal, Ontario, about halfway between Detroit and Toronto.
And I'm Paul Sheridan. I'm the Executive Director at Four Winds Westward Ho. We are a traditional independent, not-for-profit sleepaway camp located on Orcas Island in Washington State. Right between Seattle and Vancouver.
Welcome back, Paul. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I always love to have Paul on as many times as we can during the year because Four Winds is such an interesting niche camp. Whether it's the location on the island, it's your independent nonprofit, and all that stuff. Plus, you always bring great wisdom to the show, so I'm glad to have you, Paul.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Joe, we have you without delay today because you're in your car.
Without delay, maybe I should do it on my phone every week.
Well, we're so glad to have you here to join us too. We're going to do a bit different show today. It's kind of a what's relevant at the moment. We have some discussions that we were having before recording that we're going to start with. But I also keep a little file of questions that people send me throughout the year, things that are giving them the most stress. And so we thought we'd try to pick a few of those and work through some of those. So it's a mixed bag. However, the show title for today is Uncertainty is a Killer of Good Work. So we're going to open up with a discussion about uncertainty. And it's something that every camp director should become comfortable with. It's like many times we've said on the show that your job is to understand change as a camp director and to embrace change. But there are lots of points where the uncertainty levels can go up and down in different parts of your career, whether it's your own personal big changes in your property, the way your board runs, on and on and on. Joe, you said you've noticed a lot of uncertainty in your, not in your position, but in what's going on at Pierce Williams because of some big changes there.
Yeah, the uncertainty. Right. We've recently had Jessica move on as our camp director after 5 summers, and she went back to teachers college. And So that position, I wasn't sure where it was going. At the same time, we'd had a maintenance guy who had got into a pretty major car accident and wasn't able to return to work. So we were working without a maintenance position. And part of it is this concept that uncertainty, although it might not affect me in the sense it affects the work I do, but I just roll with the punches. It can affect the way that staff don't know what's coming, and so they become more anxious about what they're going to do at camp, or as Paul was saying earlier, even if they're going to apply back. And I think that as someone who's trained themselves to just sort of roll with it and be able to go with it, I can feel it in the sense of staff. So right now I still don't have a camp director, and there are staff who are very much, that makes them a bit uncomfortable because they don't know who's going to be in charge. Right. In the end, right, it's this year I'm going to do the staff interviews. I just set up Google Calendar with appointments today so people can choose their interview times. And it's just this consistency is the key to a successful camp experience for long-term success. And we've talked about that as camps locally, because we have 8 United Church camps within about an hour's drive of each other, hour and a half drive. And what the difference is just if you've had consistent leadership in an on-the-ground fashion, so not at the board level, but in an on-the-ground fashion, those camps are doing better than camps that switch camp directors every year, every 2 or 3 years, because they just have a consistent purpose, vision, and values that we put in place.
Right. Right. And, I mean, consistency over time, it sort of is an element of where you're at, Paul, the things that are going on at Four Winds that make things different this year that you've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a similar situation to Joe right now, although just slightly further along in the curve of it. We had what we call the assistant director, which is similar to what a lot of other camps would call the camp director. Moved on after 7 years, the longest that we had ever had someone in that position. She was a big part of camp and still is, and her departure is a little bit of it's a moment for camp for sure. And obviously there was a period of time where we didn't know who was going to replace her, and we were announced her replacement before Christmas, and she just started a couple weeks ago. And it's as these things go, it was a relatively minor moment of uncertainty for camp. Mm-hmm. But any moment of uncertainty about something that people care about so much is going to affect them. And we were able, our new assistant director, who's I'm traveling down in California for camp right now, and she's traveling with me and meeting all kinds of people. She's a former head girls counselor. She's absolutely fantastic. The whole community's thrilled. But that moment of uncertainty is definitely an interesting one. And I think what I do is essentially try to tamp down the upset and uncertainty, and then also work behind the scenes to shorten that period of uncertainty and get without rushing the decision, getting the decision made as quickly as we can so we can get back to a period of more certainty. But I do think we're actually, our camp is celebrating our 90th anniversary this year. For our first 75 years, we had 4 directors. Right. And then we had 6 in a period of 10 years. That was a decade of pretty crazy uncertainty for our community when you think about it. And you compare to the short period of uncertainty we just went through with our assistant director change, that was wild. And camp did survive. Camp was fine. I think that personally, I probably need to give our community a little bit more credit for its ability to deal with the uncertainty. but at the same time, it's less than ideal. So you try to, if you can move through it quickly, you do.
Right. All right. So, what are, either one of you are welcome to answer this. What are you doing to give the community, some perspective on this, or to make them feel better? And I'll let you think about that while I pontificate on the stuff that you both said. I think it's interesting what an emotional bedrock camp becomes for so many people, even if they're the kind of people who only came for 1 or 2 summers, but knowing the camp is there and that they'll recognize it when they get back, or in their mind they might go back someday, is a real emotional, like, it's a solid foundation for so many people. Maybe because they don't have the same kind of foundation at home. Maybe it's just because it's a place where they were accepted truly for the first time. And big changes, camp is such an emotional place, like Paul said. It's hard when change comes to camp. I'm always kind of surprised at the number of people who do freak out about relatively small change. When you think about a long-term history, there are people that may not have been there for a long time, but just that impact is there. But I wonder how you both help your communities manage this idea that change happens, and we happen to be going through a particular period of uncertainty, but it's part of life.
I think my quick response to that is that you build it in as part of your culture. So the longer you stay, if you start talking about change as part of your culture, it becomes easier for other people to accept that. And that's a lesson I learned from Mike Sladden at Pathfinder in Algonquin Park in Ontario. He said that his second talk every camp session is about how their camp embraces the culture of change, which meant for him as a new owner when he started that he could change something and people would be like, okay, yeah, we embrace that because we're a culture of change. And it can be more difficult for camps if you don't build that in. So I lived through a logo change of a camp that had been around since 1921. My first day on the job was the day they released the new logos.
Right.
In my role as director of public relations, everybody thought that I introduced new logos. It's been going on for 6 months to a year, but I'm the one who gets saddled with you changed the logos for the first time in 80 years. And I was like, I didn't change the logos. I'm not overly attached to the old logos, so right. I will use the new logos everywhere. And I think if you build it in as part of your culture, and also set yourself up not to be there. And that's easily said. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. It's this idea that are you making camp better because you're there? Or are you making camp better for the long term so that it can keep getting better when you're not there, right? Like, lots of people have this opinion that they're more important than they are to the success of their organization. Mm-hmm. And when they go, they're like, well, they'll see how much they miss me when I'm gone. And I encourage our board and staff and everybody to think of it in terms of, when you leave, if the next person fails, it's because you didn't give them the proper tools to succeed. Right. So what processes, what things you put in place, because a 60-year history or a 60 or a 90-year history, those shouldn't rely on a single person to make it successful or not. It should be a group effort that gives it that success. So creating a culture of change it's a long-term thing, but it's well worth it, because then people are like, oh, that seems like a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And Paul, what have you done to help manage uncertainty this year?
I think what we try to do is we're a community of young people, and young people are learning and figuring stuff out. And what we try to do is sort of teach perspective. I've had the experience, and I know that a lot of other camp directors have, of the people that have been coming to your camp for 8 or 10 years just have more perspective than the people that have come to camp for 2 or 3. The people that have come to camp for 2 or 3 tend to be your zealots, right, who are more likely to freak out about any small change because they've got a pretty small sample size, right? Like when in the grand scheme of things, and for the people that have been there for for 10 years or 8 years or something have seen a couple rounds of changes, and they're more attuned to it and they expect it more. And so I think that I spend a lot of time just mentioning that changes happen. Because I think that if you ask a Four Winds person, do we have a culture of change? They would probably say, heck no, we don't have a culture of change. Nothing changes in camp. But at the same time, like I think one thing that we being 90 years old, of course we've changed massively. Like camp is unrecognizable from what it was in 1927. Aside from a few core things that are most important. And so there's what we do try to have is a culture of paying close attention to what are the core things that are most important about our camp, and then matching up the things that we do to make sure that those match who we say we are, and so that those sorts of things bring us brings us closer to the ideal over time. And then in terms of just people passing on, I've been at camp for a long time now, and I think that probably added to a sense of consistency, which has been good mostly. But you got to be really careful that camps can devolve into a cult of personality around one person. You got to be very, very cognizant that it's not about me. It is about we all have a period of time here. That time will end at some point. And camp will go on, and camp will thrive, and so I spend a lot of time saying, probably a couple times a month, I say to somebody, I have no plans of leaving Four Winds right now, but when I do, like ... right? Like it's and you can say that about anybody in any position. I said that about our assistant director, Emily, who just left. I hope Emily never leaves, but when she does, ... and sort of setting that expectation, making it clear that the camp is a part of our lives, but it's not something that anyone does. It's bigger than all of us, and it's important to set that tone.
Not only set that tone, Paul, but just that idea that it's bigger than all of us, that if we can impart that into 16, 17 to 25-year-old staff members, right? I still remember the first major camping conference I went to as a counselor, and I saw 1,000 people in one auditorium who were also counselors at other camps. That really helped me understand that what I do, that camping as a thing is bigger than all of us, but getting them to understand that their 1, 2, or 10 summers at camp is just a flash in the pale compared to the camp is really important.
Right. Great. Thank you both very much for that. I have a series of questions, as I said, that I pulled from some folks here. And Allison asked something that fits naturally into something you both discussed, but takes us off of uncertainty. Allison is a new assistant director. And so my read on it is it's a camp she's been to before. I can't tell if she's been away or not, but this is her first full-time year-round job with this much responsibility for how camp runs in general. And she's wondering if we have any advice. And you're both kind of to take the lead on the last discussion. So I'll start us off here while you think about what your advice would be to a new year-round staff person. In Allison's case, assistant director, but you're both going to be dealing with this in your own ways in your own camps. So, Allison, I would say my advice is a couple different things. I certainly found my first summer as a director incredibly stressful. I didn't enjoy it at all, and I was I was so stressed about the responsibility that I was really just a jerk to everybody. And so I had to find some ways to enjoy camp for myself so that I could balance things. And so, for me, that was music, getting a chance to play guitar whenever I wanted, or getting a chance to teach music to people. That really helped. I also had a much different appreciation for the place. And I don't know if you're at a res camp or not, but I had a different appreciation for the place when I would get up early in the morning before most people were up, and I would just walk around. I walked the trails. I went down to the beach, sat on the dock. I had a bit of time in the place by myself, and that would give me enough energy to get ready for a big day. And your first summer is hard, but the second summer I find is a lot easier. So I think you have to be prepared for a tough first summer, but if you could set some good boundaries, that makes it possible. And I will say the other lesson that helped make so many things better in our camp culture was a lesson from my now wife, Beth, then co-director, in the thought that people are more important than programs. So if you're ever, wondering if you need to look after people or make sure that Capture the Flag gets started on time, always pick the people. And, sometimes you need to change things up or surprise people because it's just the little burst that they need. And, sometimes that might be a staff swim. It might be, I don't know what all your responsibilities are, but if you keep in mind that people are more important than program, and you can find a bit of time for yourself, I think that makes the first summer manageable, and then it helps lead to longevity. So, Paul, you're going through it right now. What sort of advice are you giving to your new assistant director?
So she's pretty well set up for this advice, but it's the advice is essentially to, and this is going to sound a little rough, but to be really brutal in evaluating yourself as a role model.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that doesn't negate the advice that you just gave about taking time for yourself, right? Because we want to role model that too. And if we're causing ourselves to be so stressed out that we become a jerk, then we're role modeling being a jerk, and that's not good either. I think that new young assistant directors, sometimes former summer staff members at the same camp, you can find yourself in a position where you identify more with your summer staff self than you do with your new camp director self. And you think, I did when I was a summer staff member, I wanted to blow off my Firewatch, and so it's not that big of a deal. You got to get used to understanding that everything you do is being watched by the summer staff. And that sometimes when we ask people to do things that they are not naturally inclined to do, they sometimes will look for excuses to not do them. And if you, as the camp director, by your role modeling, give them that excuse, that's the best excuse they could have. And so you got to kind of check yourself every day when you step outside your cabin or your tent or wherever, your teepee, wherever you're living in camp, and make sure you are ready to be seen by all those summer staff, because you are the ultimate role model.
Right.
And so try to see yourself through summer staff's eyes, and then imagine what that impression will do to their ability to be good summer staff. I remember a couple years ago, I accidentally walked out of my house. We don't allow our staff to carry cell phones and so forth at camp, and I stepped out of my house, and inside my house, I had my my phone and my headphones in, and I accidentally stepped out of my house onto my porch, still wearing the headphones in my ears. And I caught it, and I felt like I had stepped out of my house naked. Like it was like and I think that's how camp directors ought to be. If you are asking your staff to do something, you do it 110% of the time. And I think it's tough for people, a lot of people, to make that transition. I mean, we ask our seasonal leadership to do the same thing effectively. But it's the higher up you are, the more important it is. And I think it's tough for a lot of people to understand that their actions are so important.
Yeah.
And they think it doesn't matter. No one's paying attention to me. We sort of a lot of folks you have, and the ones that don't are a little off.
Yeah.
The ones that are so narcissistic to think that all their actions are of the utmost importance, or maybe that's another problem. But most folks, I think, undervalue their own actions, and so that would be my advice, is to sort of value your actions, because they have a huge impact on camp.
That's awesome. One thing I would add before we turn this to Joe, I learned a lesson from a guy named Jim Blake, as a camp director I looked up to a lot when I was getting started, and he was great at sharing his experience and his advice. And he told me early to find the worst job, like half-day job, 2 or 3 hour job in camp, and figure out what that is and take that on and do that publicly. And so for us, it was once or twice a season, the sewage filters had to be cleaned with a high-pressure washer. And it was as messy and disgusting a job as you can imagine. And I would take on that job so that people could see that when I asked them to rake leaves and it was hot out, that I was also willing to do some stuff that was hard. And and I think that sort of example helped.
Yeah, we had to fire all of our dishwashers 8 days before the end of camp a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And everyone who did not live with kids had to pull a couple of shifts in the dish room for the last 8 days. And and me and the assistant director both pulled shifts in the dish room. And of course, that was not the best use of our time to go wash dishes. Like we had other things to do. Yeah. But it was the best use of our time, in the sense that everyone saw that, hey, we were asking everyone to pull together and get through this difficult thing. Yeah. And we were right there busting suds with them. And that is, it's absolutely key.
Yeah. Joe.
Yeah, I think for a new camp director now, is she in charge or is she a program director? I didn't get that part.
I don't know. I'm saying that she's probably too.
Here's my view. If you're going in, I've started when I started at Pierce Williams, I was hired and started on June the 6th, and in Canada, summer camp starts at the end of June, and my board had a very clear message that they. Essentially, my job was just to observe for the summer, right? I didn't hire those staff. I didn't know who they were, and so I had control of purse strings, and I just sort of let the summer happen and go. And every decision I made was just to save money at camp, none of which I would change now, right? Historically, if you can get away, if you're hired full time and you have the comfort of being a long time. Or an employee that doesn't have a contract, right? So you have this feeling you'll be at camp next summer and the summer after and the summer after that. You can spend a lot of your first summer observing and letting the staff who are at camp in the past run what they believe is camp. And there's a huge value in that observation, because it shows the staff who are at the camp, the returning staff, that you're willing to listen and see. And it lets you not pick a fight where you don't need to, because when you're new, you can think that something is wrong or you need to change something right away, but you really need to ask if that's a hill you're willing to die on, right? Like, is that what's going to do it for you? And as a new staff, if you can get away with, doing what you're supposed to do and affect positive change where you can, but watch and see how camp is run, and not over insert yourself into the camp program. So don't make it all about you. Don't go and and make it, Travis's camp or Paul's camp or Joe's camp. It's some other camp. And that goes back to the conversation we had earlier, right? Camp is bigger than you, and you just happen to be the steward of that property at that moment in time. So as a new staff, observation is great, unless you're thrown into a situation where you're just put fully in charge. I've also started at a camp where there was one returning staff member, and they said, essentially, hire who you want, set the program up the way you want. And in that case, you take the bull by the horns and you do it, which is fun too, and stressful. And as a new camp director, you're always going to have stress because you haven't gone through what we at camp call the cycle, right? A full cycle of a year and what goes on. And every year that cycle comes around, it gets easier. And that's not just camp directing. It's also, the bookkeeper in our office. Once they've done a year cycle, everything gets easier because they've done everything at least once, right? Or the office manager, right? The cycle. Yeah. And for lots of camps, they follow the school year cycle because we start to calm down a bit in September, October, and then you ramp back up for the next summer. So, and also don't lose yourself, right? If you always love playing guitar at night before you go to bed, then find that time and make that time. If you are someone who loves to share quotes, let's find a way to fit that into your day, and don't lose yourself because of where you are. Yep. But don't over-insert yourself and make it all about you. Right. I think those are a couple of points. Yeah.
Balance that.
Can I riff on that for a second?
Please.
I love that line of thought. I had the camp where I got my start was a for-profit camp, and the mom of the couple that owned the camp, when I was a summer staff member, told me when we bought camp, we did not make a single change to the camp except for changes that directly affected campers' physical safety for 5 years.
Wow.
And as a summer staff member, I thought, wow, that's nuts. Yeah. But now, granted, they had bought the camp, they had put their whole life savings into it, they were committed, and they had to make it work. And so, they were perhaps a little bit, maybe 5 years is a little bit more than you need. But I've witnessed other transitions since then, and that mindset of, you know what, if it doesn't directly affect camper physical safety, maybe it's time to watch and listen, and put it in my back pocket and see later if it needs changing, and that will buy you. If there is suspicion from the community about a new director and fear about the change that they may bring, that will allay that fear. It'll give you more time to understand what the camp is about. And then, probably a couple years down the road, you'll make the change that you thought you were going to make in the first place. But it's not in those first couple of years, you do have to really prioritize the battles that you pick. Yeah. And I think camper physical safety is a good place to start. But take it slow with the other stuff.
Yep. In our experience, getting started with things, we were surprised that we would have to add in camper emotional safety to the things that we would set a minimum level of. But that was certainly something that we had to draw a really firm line on. But I love that idea of just observing and considering things. The other thing, also, because we don't know your situation, the other thing that maybe is you maybe, have finally moved into your own position at a camp that you grew up at. And so it may be almost more of the same. You're just, more in charge of the same. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to do two things. I would encourage you to say, I now have the ability to make change here. Maybe limited and maybe great ability, I don't know. But I have some ability to make change here. And so now I can consider everything that happens in this year or two of observation and figure out how to make it better, to to have better impact on kids. My measurement is always, do staff take the time one-on-one to have conversation with kids? That's the best way that we can have impact on them, is those conversations, that noticing. And so if you take that first year and say, things have always been this way my whole career that I've been at this camp, but how can I make it better to have more kids have a real connection with someone that they can look up to? And the other piece of advice, we've said this many times on this show, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, but go see other camps. If it's a place that you grew up at, get out to other camps. Joe has made a career and talked about it many times. I would encourage you to go back and listen to the old shows and find that discussion. But it could be, be a standards visitor. It could be take time off on your time off and go see other camps in action. If you have a day off in the middle of the week and, have some local camps that you could run and see one for half a day, but spend a meal at another camp while camp is going on, and 2 or 3 hours there, just so you can get a feel of how things run differently, and that'll make you feel a lot more empowered to make changes. We've had some great conversations so far. One question. I wish we had time for more, but I want to keep things to the normal, or pretty close to the normal amount of time. So one more question from Carrie Ann. When you get to that fall period and everybody leaves, or you pack up and move back to the city and don't have the beautiful surroundings, the great people, the singing, etc., how do you deal with the loneliness of the job?
I bask in it. It's funny. It's one of those things. So I spent 5 summers in Algonquin Park, which is a beautiful part of Ontario. And I worked at a camp company that had an all boys and an all girls camp across the lake from each other. And so for 3 months of the year, I lived on an island full of girls and women who were who numbered in like the 400 number range, an island that should not have had that many people living on it. And when camp ended and everybody left, the island literally was left with just myself and our maintenance guy. And I never saw Lorne. I have no idea what he did. He fixed it. I just never saw him. Yeah. And honestly, that is just at the end of the summer, that is one of the most valuable things is just to have the solitude of camp. Where I am now at Pierce Williams, it's amazing. This time of year, I was up at camp last night at 8:30, 9 o'clock, checking on a burn pile that we'd lit, and when you shut everything off and you're just watching a fire burn and you see deer in the field and the moon shining down on a snowy field, you're just like, hey, this life is good, right? Like this is awesome. There are people who get overwhelmed by being alone, but there's also, I'm amazed at how many camp directors there are in this world who are essentially introverts who happen to direct summer camp, right? They get their energy from being alone, and they can be in front of people, and that's great. But my best ideas don't come when I'm, standing in front of camp playing guitar at chapel. My best ideas come when I'm watching a fire burn on, January 31st in a snowy field by myself, right? Like that's, so, yeah.
How about for you, Paul?
Well, that's hilarious because I too am a bit of a basker in the fall.
Yeah.
And I definitely fit that description that Joe just said of the introvert who happens to have a position that is stereotypically for the extroverted. But yeah, I mean, I think I do. I definitely take the time to myself and I enjoy it. As the winter goes on, I get out and I talk with camp people. I get a lot of rejuvenation from going to camp conferences. I go to more camp conferences than I think the average camp director does, simply because I get just a ton out of sitting down and connecting with other camp directors. I go out and all the marketing we do is by visiting in families' homes and talking with both returning and new families, giving them a chance to talk to each other, talking, and building those connections with your current with your current families and building those bonds, which, by the way, in addition to reducing loneliness, I think just helps everything.
Yep.
We have a much lower, our camp has a much lower, to the point where it's not measurable, rate of being sued than your average American summer camp. And I think a lot of that comes from, part of it is that we don't do, we avoid negligent things to the extent that we can. But we do make mistakes, just like every other camp does. And I think, a lot of it comes from those relationships that we've built. So if you can find a way to have a gathering with your camp families, and connect with them, with summer staff, taking summer staff out to pizza in the winter in some college town is pays huge dividends. And they love it, and your return rate goes up, and the likelihood that even if they're not going to come back, that they send their kids or become donors someday goes up, and it fights that loneliness, if that's something that concerns you.
Right. I get the loneliness part. I certainly also revel in it. And I think everybody does. You have that moment in the fall where you're like, man, it is quiet, and I love that. Also, again, I love the place, and so it was lovely to have that time with the site and explore and play and run around with the dogs. But I did find that, especially in the last couple of years, when we moved off site, I would drive back to camp and work, and Beth would be working from our house, just because it seemed to be work best for both of us in terms of getting work done, but it was lonely. I mean, I was lucky to have a co-director to talk stuff through. But, I would say, and this is good advice, I think, for Carrie Ann and for Allison, I would look for a mastermind group. I would use the summer camp professionals group of people and find 3 other or 4 other people in the same situation, and I would make them make a solid commitment to get on Skype or Zoom for an hour and a half a month, or an hour every couple of weeks, and just have conversations about things, challenge each other, hold each other accountable, just have complaining sessions, whatever it takes. That level of someone who really knows what your job is. Like, it's great to see staff, it's great to see your family, all those things, but it's hard when people don't understand the stresses of this job, the demands of this job, etc. So find people, as Paul's talked about with conferences, find people that you can develop good relationships with and trust with, that, if you need to cry at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday in July, that you can call. And they will also get you through 3 weeks of budget process that you were just pulling your hair out about in October. And get people who are willing to make a commitment to that. I think it'll be a great part of your sustainability in the industry to be able to find and keep a group going like that. Any final thoughts?
I just think that you do whatever it's a lonely job. It's a lonely job if you're a single person to find someone, right? Like, if you're always working by yourself. So you need to fill it in with other things. Camp has this overwhelming ability to become your life and leave you no room for other hobbies. And And what I say to that is it's a lot like, and Travis, you know this, I grew up on a farm and you did as well.
Yep.
Farming is one of those things that can be a life with, and a lot of farmers I know have no hobbies outside of that. And camp director is the same. And I think that find what makes you, find something else that gives you energy as well, because that's going to help you fight off that loneliness as well.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you both. And thank you to Allison and to Carrie Ann who sent in their questions. Thank you to Paul and Joe both for opening up the topic of uncertainty and being so willing to talk about what that's like as a camp director. So therefore, I think it's time for us to move on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
We ask each of our panelists to bring a tool that helps them be a better camp director. And Paul, since we haven't heard about a tool from you in a long time, I'd like you to start, please.
Sure thing. Yeah, my tool is the DeLorme InReach. The DeLorme InReach is a device that, for camps that have trip programs where the trip leader can take this little device. It's about the size of a cell phone or a little bit larger, and they go out on their trips. And it works off a satellite signal instead of a cell phone signal. So it works anywhere with a clear view of the sky, and it can send the tripper's location to you. It can send text messages. So if they have a non-emergency help situation, they can send you information about what's going on. They can. There's an SOS button. So if they are in real trouble, they can call in emergency services to wherever they are, and their location gets reported to the emergency services. You can set them up with preset text messages. So we asked we set one of the preset messages to all is well. And I would just ask the trip leaders every night before they went to bed to hit the all is well button. And I have a login where I can log in to a website and see all my trippers, where they are, and that all is well. And if you run a trip program, you're probably familiar with the stress that exists of all these trips that are out and you don't know where they are or what's going on or how things are doing, and that ability for them to communicate and also give you their location is really key. It ends up being a nice, for those camp directors who have explored this space before, it is a really nice middle ground between the spot tracker and the satellite phone. I've rented satellite phones for trips before. And they're expensive, it's a hassle. You got to get them before the trip leaves and return them after the trip comes back. And they're you sort of tell the tripper, okay, here's the satellite phone, never use it because it is $1 million a minute. Except if you really need it, then you can use it. But this is that nice middle ground. They are, I think, about $350 a piece to buy the device, and then they have data plans at varying levels. You do have to watch the data because it is sort of on that satellite data. Like a longer text message actually costs significantly more than a shorter one. So you do want to sort of set your presets on them well. But they have enterprise plans and they have nonprofit discounts. And we really, it was the first summer that we used them this past summer and really had a good experience.
That's brilliant. Good stuff. My tool of the week is a book that I actually saw on Gabrielle's coffee table this fall, and since she is not here to pick it, she's probably going to be mad. But you've often heard Gab and I talk about making videos for camp, and it's certainly a passion of hers and an interest of mine. This is a brilliant book. Really well done, visual, short, easy to read, short lessons. It's not a short book, it's 250 pages, but easy to read, really creative, really well done. So it's called How to Shoot Video That Doesn't Suck. And as as we know, as we're getting to realize, video is going to be a huge part of the future of marketing summer camp. And giving your summer staff the tools to become better video people helps you get more kids in beds. And if heads in beds is your big mission, then I think I would encourage you to consider video being a huge part of that strategy going forward. And yeah, so that book, Steven Stockman is the author. How to Shoot Video That Doesn't Suck is a brilliant, brilliant book. Joe, you've got a thirsty pick.
I do. My pick this week is a Tervis mug, a Tervis glass. It's one of those things when we look for a tool of the week, it's one of those things that we use all the time. And oftentimes what I catch myself doing is trying to find something that I use so much that I just don't think about it anymore. I don't think to recommend it. Tervis is made in the States, and it is essentially a plastic cup that keeps cold things cold and hot things hot. It's got a lifetime guarantee on it, and I own a bunch of them. And they're great as an insulated mug, and they come with you can buy lids for them. And I have a whole bunch of Green Bay Packers ones, but I have other ones as well. And they're just a great travel type mug for walking around camp or walking, in the car. Not so good like if you want to seal things forever, right? Like they're not a water bottle that's sealed up and you can, because they're not sealed in that way. There are ones that are. They do sell water bottles as well. So Tervis is my recommendation this week.
Pretty good. All right. Well, thanks again to both of my co-hosts. Paul, it's great to have you back. I want to say that if you've enjoyed or been inspired by stuff that these guys have said today, we'd be so grateful if you took a second and went to camphacker.tv/love. And that link will get a tweet ready for you that talks about the show. If you're not a Twitter person, then you could use your podcast app and leave a review. Feel free to mention this is show 97. We're coming up on 100. And it is... it's our privilege to do so, and if we can get some feedback from you in the form of a review, they're always really helpful. Paul, thank you for being on the show. How can people follow up with you if they have a question?
So they can find all about my camp at fourwindscamp.org, and all my social media stuff can be found at paulsheridan.com.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul.
No problem. Great to be here as always.
Joe, how about you?
If people want to follow up with me, they can find me. The best two spots are campisbetter.com and yoyojoe.com, yoyojoe.com, and you can connect with me there.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
I want to take just 1 second for one more thank you. Thank you to our editor and producer, Matt Hansberg, for helping us get this show out for you. He does a lot of work in between. And from the moment that I finish this, I basically hand things over to him. So we're always grateful to Matt for what he adds to the camp community and for his long-term contribution to CampHacker. You can find Matt's show notes and all of our past tools of the week at camphacker.tv/podcast. In this case, you can look for episode 97, but there are many other 96 other great shows that we would be happy for you to listen to. And in particular, we recommend searching for ones that have Paul Sheridan on them. So I thank you all for listening. It's good to see. We're not going to put out a video version of this one, so thank you to the listeners. We're going to ignore the YouTube followers for this particular version for technical reasons, but we're grateful that you are taking us with you on walking the dog or walking around camp or all the different places that you go. Thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.